This is going to be a video documenting the process for changing rear wheel bearings on an E9x M3. Specialized tools as well as individual mentions are going to be here. The biggest thing for this job really is tools. If you've worked on a lot of cars in general before, you probably have a lot of the basic tools, right? Like 1/4 inch impact, powerful 3/8 inch impact, probably some sockets, adapters, snap ring, pliers, breaker bar, ratchets, those kind of things. But if you haven't done jobs like this before, there's a lot of tools you're going to have to buy. So first and foremost, a slide hammer with a adapter to bolt onto the hub in order to pull it off. You could buy OTC hub grappler kit. Those are quite expensive, but it will combine the slide hammer with this, where it's all in one kit. I prefer just buying them separately. I don't use the slide hammer that much, so I don't need anything special. If you're unlucky and your car has seen any type of inclement weather, whether that be snow or even lots of rain, your axles are going to be very stuck. You need to get an axle pusher. Don't try those generic 3-style ones exactly like this one. They will bend, they will break. They're just not good enough for this job. These you can have sub $150. They work really good. The only downside is that they will destroy your wheel bolts, so make sure that you have a set dedicated specifically for this job. Next thing you will need is a set of bearing tools. These can be had on Amazon for around $100. The cheap kits are fine. The whole idea is that you once you remove the hub off of the bearing, you put this onto the knuckle, and then you put a forcing plate on the back side of the bearing, and then you use screws and you pull the bearing through. This will obviously be all documented in the video later on. Now we go into more specialized sockets, specialized tools. Snap ring pliers, you're going to need a more substantial set than this. These are just here for demonstration purposes. 36 millimeter 12 point. This is what you need for the axle nut. E14 E-Torx. I recommend, if you have a stubby 3/8, I recommend this with one of those pinless adapters so you lose less torque. Really good. In this tutorial, I'm going to be removing the exhaust because I find it a lot easier to do so. So long 18 mil wrench for removing the exhaust hangers on the differential, long deep 13 for removing the rear exhaust hangers behind the exhaust as well as up on the sides of the exhaust, and you'll need the 13 for undoing the exhaust clamps to the X pipe. If it's never been off before, odds are you're going to break it, so be aware. Depending on LCI or pre-LCI, you will need either a T30 or I believe a 5mm Allen in order to remove the ABS sensor. Remove the ABS sensor first and foremost. If your car is rusty, you will probably break it. Budget that in, they're about $50. So that's just kind of the basic tools that you're going to need. You will also need some way to cut off the inner bearing race off the hub. I prefer using just a small Dremel, which most people have, and a cutoff wheel. A couple of them because they go quick, and it's going to take a while, but it's effective. And then you can get a cut along the side of it at a 45-degree angle, snap it in half, and then pry it off. That will be covered in the video here. Next one will be me getting the car set up. You're obviously going to need a jack and jack stands. Impacts make this a lot easier, especially big impacts. If you have one of the big Milwaukee 1/2-inch impacts, this job's going to be a lot easier for you. If not, you're going to be doing a lot of it with breaker bars because stuff is very, very tight. So next clip is going to be car up on jack stands, probably going over taking the exhaust off. I figured if you made it this far, you know how to take a wheel off, know how to take brakes off, and we'll kind of go from there. Alright, so here we are under the car. Angle's going to be a little weird. So first off, you need to remove these. There is a very high likelihood you will break these if they have never been off before. Next up, you need to remove the 18 millimeters here. And this is to take the exhaust off. Next up, if you have these, you would remove your ground straps, and then you would unbolt these 13 millimeters here. And you would do the same for the other side again, if you had them. This customer car does not. I would also make a note to leave these hanging here with the nuts loose. You don't have to take them all the way off yet, because this is going to be supporting our exhaust. Then we come over here, you undo this 8mm, and you undo this 8mm, and then you get in here with a 13mm extension, a 13mm deep and an extension, and you undo both of those. Using a jack, take the exhaust down. Keep note the exhaust is really heavy. Alright, so at this point, axle back is strapped. We need to start taking apart things here. First and foremost, before you forget, undo that bolt right there and take the ABS sensor out of the way. Next thing is you're going to undo both of the Allen keys for the rotor. I guess technically you could do the brakes first. These spring clips are pretty easy to do. If you push in on one side here while pulling out on it, you can get it out. If you have the pad sensor, obviously remove the pad sensor. You can choose to leave the caliper as one full assembly and just undo the 16 millimeters that are behind here. I usually just remove the caliper, and then I'll take the caliper bracket off afterwards. If your axle is stuck, you're going to want to leave the caliper bracket on and the rotor, because you're going to bolt the assembly onto here, and then rotational force to press the axle out is going to want to spin the hub. You can stick a screwdriver in the vane, pry it against the caliper bracket itself to stop it from spinning, but that's beside the point. You'll also need to use your 36mm 12 point at this point. Once you get all of those done, before you start pushing this, you're going to want to go underneath and remove the E-Torx bolting the axle to the diff. There will be a next section for that. Alright, next piece of the puzzle here. If you have a manual car, put it in neutral, take the parking brake off. If you have a dual clutch car, take the parking brake down, pull up your DCT boot. There will be a lock here. Stick a screwdriver in it, move the black piece forward, and then, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this with my hand. Nope. Stick a screwdriver in here and pull backwards and leave it backwards. That will put the car in neutral. Alright, so we're back under the car. Car's in neutral. At this point in time, we're going to go around and we're going to remove all of these with our little stubby impact and our E-Torx. They're decently tight. They don't have thread lock on them, and technically they are torque to yield, so you should technically replace them, just as a note. Alright, so the axle is now unbolted. I've obviously been here before, so this is nice and free. You try to remove the axle going up and over towards the front side of the vehicle. Okay, so at this point in time, axle is removed from the diff, hanging down. This axle nut is still on. We'll remove that in a second. Caliper bracket and caliper off the car. Rotor's off the car, and the car is in neutral. Not that it matters. Or at least it doesn't matter at this point in time. From here, you will remove the axle, and then we will slide hammer this hub off. Alright, so your axle's out. At this point in time, this is probably very noisy for you and loose. Mine is not, because again, I've been here before. Unfortunately, this is a warranty replacement because the tone ring is bad. So at this point in time, we're going to slide hammer off this hub. Alright, so like we talked about, inner bearing race stayed on, slide hammer is attached. If you don't know how to use a slide hammer, lots of videos on that. Now we're presented with the bearing. Here's our snap ring. Undo the snap ring, and then we'll put a cup on the outside here and a forcing plate on the inside using our forcing screw and pull the bearing out this way. Alright, so here we are ready to use the press kit. Again, we have a cup, we have a faceplate, we have the pushing faceplate that we are going to use from the inside. We have our forcing screw, our nut, and a washer just to make things a little bit easier. And then we have a high pressure lubricant. So the way this gets assembled is this goes on the inside. Forcing screw comes through the inside once I get my hand up in here. I'm gonna mess with it and drop it 16 different times. This goes over that, then the washer, and then the forcing screw. And you're going to put lots of lubricant on here, on here, on here, on the threads, and you're going to pull it through. And this is what it looks like when it's all said and done. I'm going to spin this while holding the bolt on the backside, and the bearing will get pulled out. And just like that, the bearing is removed. Like I said, this bearing is new because this tone ring is bad, and so it's a warranty, which is a shame. Clean out this bore if it has rust. Make sure that this flange in particular is very clean, and make sure that the flange where the snap ring goes is very clean before you reinstall the bearing. This video will pick up tomorrow when the new bearing comes in. Alright, here we are the next day. New bearing, genuine BMW SKF. Here's the very important part, the tone ring, which is this dark brown kind of tobacco colored ring, faces in. You can clearly see a difference between non-tone ring side, tone ring side. If you install this backwards, you have to buy another bearing. So make sure you install it the correct way. We're going to press it in. Here's the important part. Get a cup, or rather a pushing plate that is the exact same size as the outer race, because you're going to be pressing on the outer race of the bearing. So in this case, it's going to be getting pressed in this way. So the forcing screw will be on this side, and our receiving cup will be on the other side. And you push this until it bottoms out, and then a little bit more just to make sure it's fully seated. All right. Wheel bearing is bottomed out and installed, and the snap ring is installed. Make sure you install this, tap the top of it with a screwdriver and a hammer once you get it in, make sure it's seated all the way around. Do not forget this step. All right, change of scenery here. We're in the very messy shed. As you can see, we have removed the bearing race. It's still on there, but you understand. If you look closely, you can see a crack running along it. Basically, you need to cut pretty deep into here, and then you need to take a chisel that is longer than, or rather wider than the crack, stick it in there, hammer pretty hard, race will split, and you can just take it off. All right, we're back at the car. We have our hub with the inner race removed. Now we need to press the hub into the bearing while supporting the inner races. You'll have your old bearing laying around that you can use for a guide, so we had to support it on this race here. As you can see, I have found one that fits really nice in the inner race and doesn't touch the tone ring. So it's going to go this one on the inside, bolt, and then the hub, and then one of these top pieces just to lay flat against here, and then your forcing screw, and you're going to force it in. Okay. Wheel bearing has been reinstalled. Hub has been reinstalled. The wheel bearing job is done. You just have to reassemble. If you have access to a tool that can read the traction control system, you can install the ABS sensor and you can spin this hub by hand. I recommend using something like a drill. So you can maintain consistent speed, and you can see, it will also tell you which direction the hub is traveling. Run it for at least 30 seconds in each direction and make sure it doesn't drop forward or backwards, or the speed. Make sure those are all consistent. Again, that is what this is being warranted for. The new bearing fixed the issue, so it was for sure an issue with the FAG brand bearing. Bought a genuine one. Learned my lesson. Customer cars and personal cars will no longer receive aftermarket bearings, only genuine ones. And that's it.